Well, we can move on to, there aren't as many questions here, just a handful, for the Nissan Skyline or R35 GTR centric questions. This is an interesting one. You might just say none, but we'll see. What aspects of the R34 do you like over the R35, and what do you prefer in the R35 over the R34?
Good question. First off, when you get in that R34, you're living your dream, right? We played it on video games. We've seen pictures of it. We've seen videos of it. Getting in the R34 is a dream. That polyphony digital multifunction display, the MFD on top of the dash, I remember that, me thinking that was the coolest thing ever. Technology will never get better than that. I remember having that thought getting in the car. The fact that it was right-hand drive obviously made it more cool, because you drive it down the street and people looking at you like, what in the hell was that? You got to remember, this was the year 2000 when I bought this car. There were no other R34s running around the street that I had ever seen or even heard of at that time. Of course, this was before social media, but I had never even seen one in person. So driving that car around, anybody who knew anything about cars would, break their neck looking at the car. Most people had no idea what it was. But you forget when you're driving that car. After you get, it takes 20 minutes to get used to shifting differently, and the fact that the turn signal is now over here versus over here, and the windshield wiper is now over here instead of over here. So it takes you a little while to get used to that. And then making right-hand turns, you can't turn as tight, because in a left-hand drive car, if you turn the wheel that much, you'll be into the curb with a Hikus-equipped R34. So you can't do that. So those were some things that I miss about the car. The sound of the car, an RB26 with an exhaust on it, sounds superb. But when you're talking about over the R35, those were the things I missed. The R35, only car people know what it is. And the looks are controversial on an R35. There's some people that love it. There's some people that hate it. But it kind of flies under the radar, because running around here, there's a lot of people in exotic sports cars, Lambos, Porsches, and all that kind of stuff. And you don't really get a second look. What I like about the R35 over the R34. The R35 has almost 20 more years of technology into it. The computers in this car, the transmission in the car, the engine technology, it's just a different beast. And, the chassis stiffness, the way the car goes around corners, it's just a better car, as well it should be. It's almost a 20-year advancement in technology, so that's no surprise.
You already kind of answered this. Like, what was it like owning an R34 in the U.S.? Like, as you said, I know you kind of said this before, like about any funny comments or encounters. Like, I remember you told me that you at one point took it to a show. I can't remember what specific show it was. It was back when the car was still black, and I think you had two different sets of wheels on it. And some Nissan executives from Japan were there and were surprised to see the car there.
Yeah, I wasn't standing there when that happened. Bob Hale, the guy who did the wheels for HRE, he was standing there when that happened. The two stories that stick out in my mind was, actually there's probably three. One, when I was going to Hot Import Nights when it was blue down in Del Mar, California, down on the ocean near San Diego. And we were coming down the 5 freeway, and I was in the second to the fast lane, the number 2 lane. And there was moderate traffic, and I see this modified Honda Civic weaving through traffic behind me, right? I saw them get on the freeway, and they're weaving through traffic behind me. They finally, after several miles, are able to come over from the number 3 lane, dive into the number 1 lane, and they go flying past me, and they're looking at me like they're pointing out the window, and they're screaming and all that kind of stuff, and the driver's not paying attention. Traffic up ahead slows down. He slams on the brake too late and rear ends another car.
Oh.
So I'll never forget that. Fortunately, they were okay. Another one was when I was driving down the hill to the freeway, South Orange County. If you're going to speed in Orange County on the way to the freeway during daylight hours, you're going to get busted. It's just a matter of time. So I'm coming down the hill, cop radars me, pulls me over. He comes walking over to the wrong side of the car. He looks and says, "What are you doing over there?" So I'm like, "What are you doing over there?" He goes, "Why is the steering wheel on the wrong side?" "Did you do that?" I said, "No, I didn't do that." So he walks around the back of the car and comes over to the other side. He goes, "All right, you got to tell me what's going on with this car." I said, "It's not a project car. It's a legally imported car from Japan. That's why it's right-hand drive." Because I don't get it. What's so special about it? And I said, okay, well, if you really want me to go into it, so just basically, and I had explained to him what a GTR was. 276 horsepower, da 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 da. He goes, is it faster than a Corvette? I said, if you have one, we can race. And he just laughed. He goes, do you know what I pulled you over for? I said, it could be any number of things, but why don't you tell me? You're going a little fast down the hill. I said, yes, I was definitely going fast. So he just let me off with a warning and all that. Because they didn't ask me a lot of questions. You get pulled over a lot, that kind of stuff. And there was another one. I was at a car show. Remember, that car was built as a car show car for Maguire's. That was the intent. That's what I was doing with that car, because at the time I was a tuner consultant for Maguire's. And so I had a TV in the trunk. And so this father comes by at the car show. It was an outdoor car show, and his wife and his two kids who were teenagers, right? He goes, why on earth do you have a TV in the trunk? I said, for my ex-wife. He got it. She got it. The kids didn't get it. He thought it was funny. She didn't think it was funny. Those are my three favorite stories of that car.
That's awesome. Going back to, I already know the answer to this question, but a lot of people wanted to know, were there any difficulties in sourcing the R34s for the second film?
Great question. I've done a video on this, as you already know, because we've talked about it. But for people who are just watching and don't have time to watch the video, there was only one company at the time who was bringing in R34s, right? The same company that I bought my car from. It was a company called Motorex. And if you Google the phrase Motorex, M-O-T-O-R-E-X, scandal, you can read stories on my blog or on the internet about all that. But basically, getting 4 cars from Japan required us to air freight them. So we went back to Motorex. I paid $78,000 for my car. We were going to bring in 4 cars that were not going to be federalized, so they were cheaper. They were $48,000 a piece, plus $13,000 airfare for each car. Each car was loaded into the belly of a 747 on pallets, and then they were shipped over here and rushed to the warehouse. So yeah, there was difficulty because they were delayed. You know, getting through customs was a bitch. I have the paperwork, the letters. I actually sent letters back and forth to Motorex saying, hey, if you can't get us cars, there's going to be trouble. I mean, lawyers are going to jump on this. It's going to be really bad. You need to find out what's going on. You need to get the people on the phone. And we got our cars, and then we needed a 5th one, which became the jump car, which we had an order from a fellow by the name of Andy at Middlehurst Nissan in Great Britain.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't easy getting those cars.
Yeah. Was the car from Great Britain a UK spec car, or was it a Japanese spec car in Britain?
I'd have to look. I knew the answer to this, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I believe it was a UK spec. It was a yellow one of the rare yellow ones, right? I'd have to look up the answer. I just don't remember off the top of my head, Tom.
I remember I remember you kind of guessing it was probably a UK spec car, but I just wanted to see for sure because I remember going to GTR Registry, a fantastic resource on these cars these days, and looking it up, and there was only, if I remember correctly, there was only one UK spec yellow GTR in the database. So if it was a UK spec car, that would have been it. So I thought that was kind of neat. If you were to get an R34 today, how would you build it? Like, you're not necessarily rebuying your old one, but just getting another one. You know, we're only 4 years away from them turning 25. So if you were to get another one, would you modify it as extensively as your old one, or would you do something different?
A lot of people don't know because I don't talk about it much, but after I got that car back from Universal, I kept it blue with I removed the silver, painted it blue, put it back to what you see behind me, right? And I was going to finish my sponsorship contracts. I had sponsorship contracts with a lot of the name brands that were on the side of that car. So they had given me parts or serious discounts on parts in return for my doing the car show circuit. And at the time, there were plenty of car shows running around. And I was doing that and getting magazines. I was getting magazines in Europe, in Canada, in South America, Japan, United States. It was a hot commodity back then. So I was going to finish that out, and then the car was going to get redone. So different seats were going to go in the car. The cage was going to be done properly, proper fuel cell in the car. All the audio shit was going to come out. And then the engine stuff was going to get done. I had plans to do a single turbo upgrade and more carbon fiber on the car, which was just getting to be hot back then. But if I redid it today, it would be Volt TE37, some kind of body kit, lots of carbon fiber on it. I don't know if have vents and strakes and gills attached to the aero on the car, like you see those extra pieces you add onto a front bumper, on the front fenders, the rear diffuser with carbon fiber, and it would be cleaned and not much in it. I'd probably still have a good, the pop-up sound system in the car with some decent speakers in it, but not much more than that.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, because the brakes were already done on the car and the suspension was already done on the car. It had everything it needed to go forward.
Kind of, sort of related, kind of a little bit of a tangent, but that's why this is the final question. Are you keeping an eye out for the next generation of GTR, the R36, for instance?
We are. I was involved in discussions about what the R36 might look like a year ago last summer. I think Nissan is really trying to figure out what's the best way to go. It's hard to predict the future for any car manufacturer, especially with all the unpredictable things going on lately. So is it going to be, a straight six? Is it going to be a V6? Is it going to be single turbo, twin turbo? Is it going to be all-wheel drive? Is it going to be hybrid? We've got a crazy motor and then maybe electric motors for the front or something. Who knows? Who knows what it's going to be? Interestingly enough, they just released a commercial that they showed their whole lineup, which was supposed to carry them through 2022. In that lineup of cars, the 400Z was at the forefront, but there was no R35 or no R36 in that lineup.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
So what that means to me, how I interpreted that anyway, is that they're not going to tease that car because they're not ready to show anything that gives away their line of thinking. So we may not even see what that car looks like until 2022, if it's going to be released. It may not come out at all. We don't know. I mean, with all the problems they've been having because of the Carlos Ghosn thing and cleaning up that mess, and they're reducing the number of models they have. I think they're going like from 55 to 45 or something like that. We don't know. The 400Z that I saw, the one with the rounded style headlights and the really long front nose, if they build that car that way, I would buy one. That would be my daily. I'd keep the R35, but I would buy that for sure. The Super for me, as I told the Toyota people when I spoke to them, I said, what's keeping me from the Toyota is it doesn't have the proportions of the FT1, right? That really long hood and all that. And the interior of that car is bloody awful. It's all BMW, and I hate BMW interiors. Absolutely despise them. The SciTech joystick that they use as a gear shift mechanism should be banned. It's terrible. It's plastic. It's just shit. And so if they had the wraparound dash like the Mark IV did, right, and kind of updated that, even if it was with digital or whatever they got to do to update it. But the fact that they put a monolithic BMW Z4 dash in there, it's like they're not even trying. So,
for me, I'm kind of hoping with the 400Z they put that the VR30 into that, because I think that would be an incredibly tunable engine. And speaking of other engines, do you think that if they do another generation of GTR, should they keep the VR38 or should they just change it either by increasing displacement or cylinder arrangement?
Well, whatever. The short answer is I'm not married to any one engine configuration. What I am married to is that the base horsepower GTR needs to be north of 600 horsepower. We're already, I think the last iteration was 575 of our base GTR. So anything under 650 is going to disappoint a lot of people because, look at the competition. So if it's, 675 and the Nismo version is 740 or something like that, and then you're talking about, competing with Hellcats on just based on horsepower numbers. But I think anything less than that, it's going to be a disappointment. The shit part about this is that if they release a car that's 600 horsepower engine, but the rest is made up by electric motors, I wonder how that's going to be received, and I wonder how that's going to affect tunability.
Right. Yeah, there isn't a massive tuning crowd or aftermarket crowd for electric or hybrid vehicles quite yet. That's still actually a very new thing.
I don't even know how it would work. I mean, let's just say you didn't modify the electric motors in any way, shape, or form, but you're just going to modify the internal combustion engine in it. But how do you account for what's going on with the computers and how the computers read and adjust power to the individual wheels with the electric motors? if that technology is locked up. No, I know there's pretty much no such thing as technology being locked up, because every ECU that they ever said was unbreakable and uncrackable has been cracked, it's been hacked.
Right.
So it just depends.
Yeah, that's something I've always wondered about electric cars, and especially hybrid vehicles. I'd say more than electric cars, because with electric vehicles, you can just put that in, and that's the only factor you really have to worry about in terms of the powertrain. But with hybrids, like for instance, I've had a lot of exposure to the P1 and the technology in that, where they have the V8s in there working alongside the hybrid. The V8's making like 730 horsepower. The electric motor makes up the rest to make 903. And they work together, and the electric motor isn't working all the time. It's just filling in like gaps during gear changes and when the turbos aren't spooled. So I always thought, if you turned up the power in the combustion engine without fiddling with the electric motor, would it still have that balance, or would it lose it? I have a suspicion that you'd have to tinker with the electric motors too, but I wouldn't know how you do that.
In my mind's eye, and I'm not a professional tuner, it would seem to me that they would be able to intercept the signal that tells the electric motors to turn on, right, at basic selectable intervals. So if you build the engine in the car to make from 750, now the engine's making 900 horsepower because you modified it, then you could probably intercept the signal to the electric motors and say, okay, still come on at this point, but don't come on at this point. I'm guessing.
Right. It's complicated, but I always find that technology to be very interesting. That was actually the first car that ever drew me away from just tuners and more humble exotic cars. Until I came across that car, I was never a hypercar, supercar enthusiast. It was that car that kind of broke the barrier between me and a lot of those other cars. Until then, I always thought, oh, all the cars I like are actually quite humble. And then I kind of went, well, that's gone. But yeah, all right, cool.
So we'll see what happens with the new R36 if and when it comes out.
Yeah,
I have my eye on it. I'm not liking the way they're going with putting all these like Nismo style bumpers front and back on the car and make it more angular. I mean, the 2017, 18, 19 GTRs, the fronts are getting really angular, which is moving the design forward and so forth. I'm not a big fan of it because it all looks like they're trying to rip off the Veris body kits, which I really dislike. They just put too many fins, grills, strakes, and gills on those things, and it's not my cup of tea.
I think for the design language of the R35, more recently, in terms of the 2020 model, the only one I actually approve of is the Nismo, because with all the base model ones, they seem to have very similar front bumpers to Altimas or Maximas, and I just feel like when I made that observation when I was in Houston actually, and I saw a Maxima go by, and I thought that centerpiece of the Maxima or Ultima, I can't remember what it was, looked a lot like kind of the center part of an R35's front bumper, and I thought, shouldn't those cars be a little bit more dissimilar then?
It's an interesting take, because I was actually having this conversation with Toyota people the other day. I basically recanted a story that I remember from working with the Dodge guys. And when the Dodge Viper came out, way back in the day, I think it was 1990 or 1993 was the first year of the Viper, whatever, about that time. So they used that kind of iron sight grill, that just a plus symbol iron sight style grill. And they put that grill on everything. It was on Dodge Neons, it was on Dodge Stratuses, it was on 300s, it was on everything, or any Dodge project, I should say. And I asked them that, why are you making these cars look like the Viper? Because it kind of devalues the Viper. He says it's the opposite. The Viper is the halo piece. Everybody who comes into the showroom wants to look sporty, so they want to look like that car. But doesn't that devalue the halo car? No, that was their answer. So maintaining brand identity across the cars. I mean, every BMW has a BMW grill. It may be slightly different shape, but you can tell it's a BMW grill.
Yeah.
Like Lexus, they do the spider grill, right? Audi uses the giant front grill. It's brand identity. I get why they do it. Do I agree with it? Not in all cases. I think some of the cars these manufacturers put their grills on look stupid. The new BMW grills are insane. They're giant. They're like tombstones. They're huge. And Mercedes, I've been saying for decades, they're really proud of their logo because they stick a badge on the car. It's the size of a coffee dish, a coffee cup dish. I'm like, okay, we get it. All I need is a little thing this big. That's it. I don't need you to advertise for free with something that's, you know.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I went to a BMW dealer in St. Louis to talk to the managers there and stuff like that. But after I was done, I went outside to look at some of the cars, and I saw an M8, and I saw the grill on that, and I went, that's bigger than my hands, bigger than my head. I could see so much of. I don't know if it was the intercooler, but you could see a lot of the stuff behind the grill.
Air conditioning condenser, right? So
Yeah.
when I see something like that, being the cynic that I am after 40 years of futzing around with cars, it tells me that if you have big giant grills, this car has an overheating problem. Okay, because they make sure you have a lot of a lot of airflow through there. Because when I open the hood, I already know it's going to be covered by 27 square feet of plastic covers to prevents me from doing anything. Like if I wanted, God forbid, change my own spark plugs, or God forbid, bleed the brakes or anything like that. No, they just don't want you to do that. And then all that heat that stays in there, you got to have airflow to get it out. Other than that, if it's a styling design, remember when people were banging on Chris Bangle for his styling choices, the early 2000s BMW stuff. They used to call the back end of BMWs the Bangle butt. Google that phrase. Your viewers will get a kick out of that. He was chastised for his styling choices as well.